All right, let's go to the childcare policy issue, because this is one where the devil is in the detail. A new report from the ACCC has found that childcare fees in this country have soared by as much as 32% since September 2018. That's well ahead of inflation, and it's getting worse. The government's got a major subsidy coming into force this month, supposedly to help people with cost of living. But would you believe taxpayers are spending, this is you, $13 billion a year on childcare? That's what we're paying. And there's reports that centres, knowing the subsidy's on its way, have already started to raise the rates, meaning not much is going to be different from parents. There's not going to be cost of living relief. It's going to get eaten up by these cost increases. Joining me now to pull it apart, the Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, Daniel Wilde. I tell you, I'm tripping over my words because I can't wait to get into this issue, Daniel Wilde, because it is such a big one, right? Childcare, everyone thinks, yep, good idea, let's support families. But my grievances with it is, A, we're telling people that they can only have a particular type of care. I think that's wrong. No choice or not enough choice for parents. But on this issue of childcare operators, every single time we put the money in the kick as taxpayers, most of them are for profit. They just ramp up their fees, and we're not getting cheaper childcare out of this in the end, are we?
No, you're right, Peter. It's a massive cost to taxpayers, as you've just outlined, but little benefit to parents that have got to pay for it. When you've got a system where there's a lot of regulation and red tape imposed at the state level, then you've got the government that's putting in billions of dollars a year through subsidies. That's only going to do one thing to prices, which is put them up. So the childcare providers, they benefit, but taxpayers lose out because that's yet more money when we have about $800 billion of debt at the federal level alone. But also because prices are going up, that very rapidly eats into the subsidies that parents are getting. So they're still on the treadmill, running faster and faster, and they've got these subsidies, but more of it's going to feeds. And at the end of the day, they're not much better off.
You'll remember the debate at the time in the Rudd-Gillard years when it went from being childcare to childhood education, and we demanded anyone working in a childcare centre had to have all of these qualifications. No one was allowed to say it was child minding. You know, we were beaten over the head about all of that. And I get that it is education for littlies, but it's very basic education, right? So explain to me why people are paying $45,000 a year for childcare when you can send a Year 12 kid to Geelong Grammar for that much money. How's it gotten so far out of control?
Well, there's a couple of things, Peter. A moment ago, you mentioned the increase in prices since 2018. Looking through the ACCC report, the main figure that stood out to me is the massive increase over that period of kids under 5 that are going to childcare. It's gone from about 50% in 2018 to 70% today. So there's been a massive surge in demand. I think that reflects the fact that a lot of families are doing it tough. It used to be the case that, you know, in this country, you could basically get by with one income earner and still have a decent middle class life. Today, you basically need to have 2 income earners in order to be able to get by. So we've had more people going into the workforce. That brings a lot of benefits, but we also have these costs on the other side of the equation. As you also mentioned, Peter, it's a question of choice. The system is not working in the best interest of families because it's not designed to. It's designed to funnel families into one particular form of daycare. Now, that may well work for a decent number of families or even a majority, but the role of government here should be to support families to make decisions that are in their own interest and to give them choice rather than funneling them into one particular type of care.
Yeah, money in their pocket, I always say. Let them pay a grandma and grandpa to look after the kids if they want, or someone in their home like a nanny or family daycare. Give the choice back to parents. It's interesting in Canada, and I picked this up this week, they are rolling out $10 a day childcare across the country. $10 a day. They've had a scheme in Quebec that's worked really well at $5 a day for 25 years. They think they can do this right across the country. We're spending as much as $135 a day for one child, and the Canadians say Australia is the example of what not to do. So where have we gone wrong?
Well, look, the devil is in the detail as always with these issues. In Australia, what happens is we subsidise the parents, as we've just been talking about. That goes into the market, bids up the price. That's why the fees are so high. In Canada, they do the opposite. They subsidise the childcare providers, so they can cap the price at $10 a day in terms of the fee. But of course, the cost is not $10 a day, so they make up the difference to the childcare provider. Now, they're spending something like $30 billion over the next 5 years on this particular scheme. So really, at the end of the day, you're either going to be spending billions on subsidising parents or spending billions on subsidising the childcare providers. I think you're right when you say the role of government here should be putting money in the pockets of families, let them choose what they want to do, whatever that might be. That's going to give better outcomes for everybody, other than the childcare service providers, of course.
I'm just doing a quick addition. Even at $30 billion in Canada, they're still about $20 billion cheaper than us here with their model against our model. I just want to grab you before we go. You were in regional Western Australia last week. I know you were meeting with farmers and a lot of concerned communities about the new Cultural Heritage Act. It's basically to wipe away private land rights, private ownership for farmers and others. They're going to have to get approval from Aboriginal elders to dig a hole or put up a fence. What was the feeling like on the ground?
Well, they're seething about what's happening there. As you say, their property rights are being taken away from them. They feel taken advantage of, that the inner city elites and politicians take them for granted. It wasn't until Sky News put a spotlight on this, and Tony Seabrook at the Pastoralists and Graziers Association and the IPA, when we were there in Katanning, I was talking to you about this issue, that the government made a small back down and basically delayed the laws for a year, but they're still going to come in. These need to be scrapped, and farmers are still very angry and seething about the treatment that they're receiving.
Well, you keep up your campaign at the IPA, Daniel, because we'll keep it up here. And Tony Seabrook was fantastic in his ability to articulate what's a really complex law, and I hope he keeps up the fight too. Thank you for your time.